The story of my parents not attending my wedding begins with a series of unfortunate events that, in hindsight, I can see clearly were entirely avoidable if I had known better or made different choices. In 2021, shortly after graduating from college, I found myself facing the overwhelming challenge of adjusting to life in a new state. I had secured a job, but the cost of living was high and the rent prices were even higher. In a desperate situation, the Scotts, family friends of my parents for many years, offered me a deal that seemed too good to be true. They invited me to stay in their guest house for just $300 a month, a price that seemed like a godsend in comparison to the exorbitant rents in the area. At the time, I didn't think twice. The Scotts had been close to my family for as long as I could remember. My parents and theirs had done business together for years, and I knew their three children quite well. I thought this arrangement would be the perfect solution to my financial struggles, a temporary place to stay while I got my footing in a new town. Little did I know, what seemed like a generous offer would evolve into a year-long nightmare that would have lasting consequences. From the moment I moved in, it quickly became clear that the Scotts were not simply offering a place to live. They were subtly inserting themselves into every aspect of my personal life. Their involvement wasn't limited to just friendly advice or casual conversation. It quickly became intrusive and controlling. They began to express unwarranted opinions about my relationship with my boyfriend. Despite my boyfriend and I being responsible adults, both with stable careers, neither of us smoked or drank, and we didn't engage in any reckless behavior. The Scotts painted us in a negative light. They accused me of being promiscuous, spending too much time away from home, and even falsely claimed I was planning to secretly move in with him. It was an onslaught of baseless accusations that started to wear on me. Their distaste for my boyfriend was palpable. They treated him with passive-aggressive comments and outright condescension, even going so far as to make disparaging remarks about his adoption status, as if that somehow made him less worthy of respect. I was devastated, not just by their harsh treatment of him, but by their unwillingness to accept my choices. The tension reached new heights when the Scotts, in their infinite wisdom, called family meetings, where they made the absurd claim that I was a bad influence on their teenage daughter. The fact that they barely knew my boyfriend, having met him only a handful of times, did nothing to temper their hostility. One particularly alarming incident was when the father of the Scott family shared his marital issues with me in an attempt to bond. He crossed every line of propriety, blurring the boundaries between landlord and tenant in a way that made me deeply uncomfortable. He confided in me about his lack of a sex life, an inappropriate and utterly unnecessary conversation that further cemented the growing unease I felt in that house. But the tipping point came when, after a fridge in the guest house broke, they insisted that I pay for the $900 replacement. It felt like the last straw in a long series of manipulative and exploitative behavior. Their influence over my parents was undeniable. My parents, who had always been relatively distant in supporting me through this, sided with the Scotts. They would constantly belittle my boyfriend without any real reason, and I began to feel isolated. Eventually, in late 2022, I made the decision to move out. I packed my things, shared a few brief words with the Scotts, and left. I chose not to say goodbye to avoid further confrontation, feeling completely drained by the entire experience. Fast forward to the summer of 2023. After a tumultuous year of rebuilding my life and relationship, my boyfriend and I had settled in a new state, and he proposed. To my shock, when he asked my parents for their blessing, they were not just accepting, they were enthusiastic. They flew out to be part of the engagement celebration, and everything seemed to be falling into place. It was a moment of joy, a fresh start, but little did I know the drama was far from over. As we began planning our wedding in the fall of 2023, my future in-laws offered to cover the cost of the event. My mother, however, was strangely distant from the planning process. She repeatedly refused to take part in any decisions, even though I invited her multiple times. She claimed to hate the whole process, something that caught me completely off guard. The one thing she did agree to was to go dress shopping, but even that felt more like an obligation for her than a true desire to be involved. It was confusing, but I tried to let it slide. Then, out of nowhere, my dad texted me, urging me to invite the Scotts to the wedding. I tried to remain calm and polite, explaining that I couldn't invite them because it would cause me significant distress on a day that was supposed to be joyful. His response was not one of understanding, but rather one of anger. He accused me of trying to start my happy life by destroying his. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I stood by my decision, knowing that having the Scotts present would bring nothing but toxicity. This was when things escalated. My father refused to accept my decision and told me that if the Scotts weren't invited, they wouldn't come to the wedding. In the blink of an eye, everything unraveled. My mother uninvited me to Christmas, a family tradition that had been the cornerstone of our relationship. It felt like a direct punishment for my refusal to invite the Scots, and it broke my heart. I tried to salvage the situation by apologizing and explaining my side, but my parents weren't willing to listen. They hurled insults at me, claiming that I had canceled my side of the family. It was a painful and confusing time. Despite the exchanges of Christmas and birthday greetings through text, I have not spoken to them about the situation. The wounds they inflicted were deep, and their absence on the eve of my wedding weighs heavily on me. I feel confused, guilty, and deeply hurt. All of this pain, all of this conflict, all because I refused to invite the Scots. I woke up this morning to a barrage of text messages from my mother. The first few were simple enough, but as I read further, I could feel the frustration and anger rising in my chest. She was demanding that I end my engagement, cancel the wedding, quit my job, and move back to their home. The audacity of it all was overwhelming. I stared at the screen, trying to process what I had just read. She had no idea how much this request hurt me. Her messages were filled with phrases like, I know you're unhappy. It's okay. You tried. Now it's time to come home. You have some maturing you need to do. I felt my blood boil as I read those words. The nerve to tell me that I need to mature when I had been living on my own, supporting myself financially, and making decisions for my life for years. It was as if everything I had worked for, everything I had achieved was being dismissed. And the worst part was, my mother honestly believed that she was doing the right thing by saying this. This wasn't the first time she had tried to impose her will on me, but this was by far the most drastic. 6 months ago, when my fiance and I shared our engagement news with my parents, they were thrilled. My mother shed happy tears, congratulated us, and even helped with some of the wedding planning. She seemed so supportive, so excited about the future. Now, less than half a year later, everything had changed. It was as if she had forgotten that she had given her blessing, and now she was turning around and telling me to throw it all away. I was both stunned and deeply hurt. How could they do this? I'm a grown woman, living independently with a successful career and a loving partner. I was making choices that were right for me, and yet my parents seemed to think that their control over my life should never end. This sudden shift in their attitude made me question their respect for me as an adult. It was as if they couldn't understand that I had my own life, my own plans, and that my happiness and well-being didn't revolve around what they wanted. I took a deep breath and replied to the text messages. I told her firmly that this was my life, and if they couldn't respect my decisions, then that was on them, not me. I couldn't believe I was saying these words, but it was the truth. I had reached a point where I couldn't keep allowing them to control me, to dictate every aspect of my life. I had worked so hard to build my independence, and now it felt like they were trying to tear it all down with a few text messages and demands. And as I sat there processing everything, I felt a deep sense of betrayal. I wasn't asking for their approval, I never had, but I did expect them to at least respect my choices. The fact that they were willing to disrupt my entire life because things weren't going according to their plan was more than I could handle. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. How had it come to this? I had done everything they asked of me growing up. I had followed their rules, respected their opinions, and worked hard to make them proud. And now, when I finally made a decision for myself, they were trying to destroy it. I'm financially independent. I don't rely on them for anything anymore. I have a wonderful job that I'm passionate about and a partner who loves me and supports me. And yet, somehow, in their eyes, none of this was enough. They wanted me to give it all up and return to a life I had long since outgrown. I'm in shock. How do parents who are supposed to support and nurture their children come up with this kind of behavior? How can they possibly think they have the right to control my every move as if I were still the child they could manipulate? It's a bitter pill to swallow. The realization that no matter how much I've grown, no matter how independent I've become, my parents still see me as someone they can control is devastating. But I'm also resolute. This is my life. And if they can't respect that, then it's their loss. 3 months have passed since my parents made it clear they would not attend my wedding. At first, I found some peace in accepting their decision. I looked forward to celebrating the day with the people who truly wanted to be there, and knowing that my parents wouldn't be present gave me some relief. I thought I could move on, focus on what really mattered, and enjoy the next chapter in my life. But that peace was shattered when I received a text from my younger brother, 19M, telling me that our parents had threatened to kick him out of the house and cut him off financially if he attended my wedding. The impact of this revelation was crushing. I've always been incredibly close with my brothers. I love them dearly, and the idea that my parents were now using such cruel tactics against them was unimaginable. I have three brothers. One is 27, one is 22, and my youngest is 19. While my older brother has been living independently for a while, my two younger siblings still live with our parents. Despite their decision not to attend my wedding, I had told my brothers how much I wanted them there. I assured them that no matter what, I would support them and that their presence meant the world to me. After they both expressed their desire to attend, I booked their travel arrangements with optimism, believing that the love and support we shared would be enough to overcome any obstacle. However, I was naive to think that our parents would simply accept this. Their subsequent outburst was directed at my brothers, and they made it clear that they would go to extreme lengths to prevent them from attending. They used financial threats, claiming that if my brothers went, they would be betraying the family and would face serious consequences. I was devastated. I even offered to financially assist my brothers, knowing that our parents would likely kick them out if they went. But I knew that asking them to leave the only home they had ever known would be too much. The familiarity of home, despite its toxicity, was something they couldn't just give up. In response to this, my brothers called me, suggesting that we hold an intervention. They wanted to address the broader issues within our family, including the emotional abuse they had witnessed from our parents. As much as I tried to explain that this was a bad idea, pleading with them to reconsider, I ultimately supported them. I couldn't bring myself to let them face this alone. We were siblings, and I was bound by that loyalty, even if I was terrified of what might happen. Yesterday, my worst fears were confirmed. The intervention, which was supposed to be a conversation about healing, devolved into a horrifying 2-hour exchange filled with personal attacks, vile accusations, and verbal abuse. The worst part was the absolute disregard for my feelings and any shred of respect I had left for our family. My father's tirade, filled with insults, not only targeted me, but also my fiancé and our life choices. His anger seemed endless, and it felt like he was doing everything in his power to destroy my sense of self-worth. Here are just a few notes I took during the call. My fiance is not an intellectual because he enjoys snowboarding and doesn't engage in intellectual conversations. My fiance doesn't have royal or noble blood, so he can't have intelligent children. It was rude for my fiance to not bring flowers or wine when he flew from another state just to ask for my hand in marriage. My decision to change careers and move to a new state with my fiance is just a manipulation tactic. My dad said it's the right thing to do to call people names and insult them when you're angry. My dad told me my career change was stupid, and that by making such a decision, I was cutting him out of my life. He thinks my fiance's job as a salesman makes him a loser. My parents are upset that I didn't invite my uncle, whom I haven't seen in 13 years and who lives in Russia, literally a WTF moment for me. My dad said my relationship is wrong and that he's not happy about it. He even said it would be smart to break up. My dad said he regretted not punching my fiance in the face when he asked for his blessing and that it would haunt him forever that he didn't do it. He said my fiance's parents are mean for not responding to their texts. He called my fiance's mother a bitch. He insulted everyone at my engagement party, calling them unintellectual rednecks and saying that he was shocked by the people I had chosen to surround myself with. The last few minutes of the call consisted of my dad screaming at the top of his lungs that I was stupid, an idiot, dumb, and a bitch. I started crying hysterically at this point, feeling like a little girl again. He called me a liar when I explained the horrible things his friends had done to me and why I didn't want them at the wedding. While crying, I told my dad, I just wish you cared about my feelings too, because I'm also hurt and just want you to understand my perspective. His response? Why the fuck should I care about your feelings? You don't respect me, my friends, or my values. Fuck your feelings, you stupid bitch. I ended the call there. After the call, my brothers said they would still attend the wedding. They made it clear that this had become an issue of standing up to our father's unacceptable behavior. Despite their attempts to defend me, we were all outmatched by my father's narcissism. Enduring that call was agonizing, but it was important for my siblings to witness his true nature. Gaslit, invalidated, and utterly dehumanized. I couldn't believe what had just transpired. I never thought I would find myself blocking my parents, but here I am. Today marks the first day of going no contact. Update 3. After the call, I felt like everything had shattered, not just between me and my parents, but deep within myself. The world I had known for so many years suddenly felt foreign and unrecognizable. I had always believed that family was supposed to be a source of unconditional love and support, a place where I could seek comfort no matter the challenges I faced. But now, that belief had been completely overturned. Every effort I had made to meet their expectations, to follow their rules and gain their approval, seemed like it meant nothing. Instead of encouragement, I was met with anger and cruelty. I thought back to my childhood, to all the moments I tried so hard to make them proud, to show them that I was worthy of their love and respect. I had always hoped that, no matter what, they would be there for me. But now I realize that no matter how much I gave, how much I tried to prove myself, it was never enough. And I could no longer keep sacrificing my own happiness just to keep them happy. I had lost sight of who I was in the process of trying to fulfill their expectations. I had built my life and my identity around the idea that family came first. But in the end, I was forced to ask myself, is it worth it? Is it worth losing myself to appease people who don't see me for who I am? The decision to cut ties with my parents wasn't something I took lightly. The thought of completely severing my relationship with them was heartbreaking. But as the days passed, I began to realize that it was the only choice I had left. I could not continue to allow their toxic behavior to dominate my life. I could not keep pretending that everything was okay when deep down I felt small, diminished, and hurt. The constant verbal abuse, the threats, the manipulation, it had all taken its toll on me. The hardest part was acknowledging that I could not change them, that I could not fix the brokenness of our relationship. I had spent so many years hoping that someday they would understand me, that they would see my choices not as a betrayal, but as a natural part of my growing up and finding my own path. But that day never came. And now I was faced with the reality that I had to choose myself, my own happiness, my peace of mind, my well being, over the familial ties that had once defined me. It wasn't easy to accept, but slowly I began to feel a sense of relief. No longer would I live in fear of disappointing them or walking on eggshells around them. No longer would I feel like I had to suppress my true self to make them happy. The relief wasn't instant, but as the days passed without the toxic influence of their constant criticisms, I started to feel lighter, freer. This was not the end of my story, but the beginning of a new chapter. I had my fiance, who had stood by my side through all the pain, and my brothers, who were unwavering in their support. I had created my own family, one built on love, respect, and understanding. And though the pain of losing my parents still lingered, I knew that it was necessary for me to move forward. It was painful, but it was also empowering. Today marks the first day of a new life for me, a life where I am free to be who I truly am without fear of judgment, rejection, or control. I will no longer let anyone, not even my parents, take that away from me. And while I don't know what the future holds, I know that I will stand strong in my choices and continue to live authentically without compromise.